Hello, this is Dr. Dave Maslach talking about reciprocity.com, the sharing economy proofreading platform that I am trying to build. The E is spelled with a 3. And today what I'm going to do is talk to you about how to grow your business by focusing on organizational structure. And this is all about transitioning from a small company to a large company. And this is really important. This is all part of my Startup and Small Business Saturday series. So I'm a professor of innovation strategy and entrepreneurship at a large state institution in Florida. You can look me up if you're at all interested. So this is the kind of stuff that we might talk about in a business school, where we actually get into some of this stuff and talking about how do we make this transition from being a small company to a very large company. It's actually a fairly tricky thing, and it's fairly common for most organizations to go through this. So in this video, what I'm going to do is go through the discussion of what this transition is, why I'm focusing on organizational structure, yay, then get into what are the different sort of moments where it gets a little bit dicey for organizations, and then finally, just a recommendation of what you can do to help out, because I know it's a little bit difficult to go through this transition, because lots and lots of companies around the US, around the world, go through this transition on a regular basis. And just to know, this is a video to let you know, this is not anything out of the ordinary. A lot of people have gone through this before you. Organizations have to go through a series of problems along the way, and they have to go through a lot of small businesses challenges along the way. This is all completely normal. So what do I mean from the transition from a small business to a large business? So in the United States, a small business is any firm that's less than 500 companies. Now around the world, this is generally different. Generally, it's 250 employees. Sorry, I meant 500 employees. So a company, if it's less than 250 employees, then that's considered a small company. And as it grows, it can go into a large company, which is more than that particular number. Now, this does change depending on the thing that you are building. Some online things, software things can grow very, very large and have very few employees. So it does transition, it does change depending on this, but generally we focus on employees. This is probably the most important metric, because there's the problems that happen along the way that are more associated with employees than the actual infrastructure that you have. Okay, so now that we got that out of the way, there is a lot of problems that you experience throughout this process of growth. So normally, most businesses will start out with maybe 1 employee, 2 employees, if they're doing a kind of a partnership. But the partnerships are difficult to manage generally, but sometimes they do have that. And sometimes if you're a startup, it is like a sort of Silicon Valley type startup. You might have, say, 10 employees that join a particular company at the beginning, because they have resources that allows it to grow. They get some sort of venture capital or something like that, some sort of financial resource that allows them to grow. Some restaurants, for example, they might start out at maybe 30 to 50 employees, and then that allows them to grow as they sort of transition and move along the process of growing. So this is not unusual, this transition. And you have to change and the reason why you want to change is your performance starts to die out after you get what's called kind of diminishing returns with this sort of structure you have. And depending on the type of industry, depending on where you are, what kind of firm you are, what the culture is, it's going to change on where there's sort of these break points where you have to transition to a different kind of company. But it does go through this particular process, maybe at the beginning. So that the most simplest type of organizational structure, and this is organizational structure. It seems like kind of boring and dry, but it's actually really important, because this determines, and what we're talking about here is reporting structure and how decisions are made within an organization and how information is passed and flowed through an organization. And it really determines the performance of organizations. This is kind of a mainstay. This has been around. We've talked about this probably for about 30, 40, even 50 years now. This is really, it's pretty sort of old, it's an old idea that you should focus on the structure of your organization to allow it to grow. It's very, very important. And so you might start off what's called a manager, sort of a simple organizational structure at the beginning. And this simple structure, it sort of acts as, and you are, say you're the manager, and I'm sure some of you are a manager watching this, right? You're a startup. And what everybody, all the employees around you, maybe you're the CEO, maybe you are the CTO, and all the other employees around you, and maybe you have 5 of them. Maybe those 5 employees report directly to you, and those 5 employees, they listen to you, they report to you, you tell them what to do, and that's generally the way that structure works. But here's the thing, after probably, maybe about 10, maybe even more than that, maybe if it's a larger, maybe you're a restaurant, for example, and things are kind of well-defined and people understand the restaurant industry, maybe it's 30 people. At that point, it becomes very difficult to manage all of those people because they're all reporting to you. And what's going to happen is you're going to get overwhelmed. There's going to be what's called communication breakdowns. You can't communicate very effectively between the different people in that structure. There's a breakdown. There's also a coordination breakdown. Some people might end up, and you see this a lot, and when I see this in a restaurant, I just walk out because I know it's poorly managed. I see people standing around and they're kind of, twiddling their thumbs, doing this kind of thing. That is a coordination problem because they should be working on a fairly regular basis. That means the restaurant's probably poorly managed. You can go into one of the quickest ways to figure out whether a restaurant is very well managed or not. This is a simple trick. Just go right to the bathroom right away. Look at the bathroom, see how clean it is. If it is clean, then it's probably well managed. If it is disorganized and it's kind of smelly and stuff like that, as some bathrooms in restaurants are, it's probably not very well managed, and the quality of the food might be suspect. And so you should probably, if it's really bad, just walk out. But you should take that into consideration. So that's a coordination breakdown that might actually happen within the organization. And then, so you have these different problems, a communication and coordination problem, and you might have sort of motivation problems that happen as well. And all of these are sort of symptoms of the organizational structure breaking down. And this is probably a management problem that should be addressed in your organization. I know some of you do experience that, right? Because you are growing, you've reached a point where you can't do everything in the organization. Then what ends up happening is an organization, in order for it to grow, because you get these what's called diminishing returns, your performance of the company is going to start falling after a while. And people are going to know, your customers are going to know. And then what ends up happening is you move to a functional structure. So this is where you say, okay, this is too hard. I can't manage it. This is driving me bananas. I'm going to divide it up into different functions within the organization. So I'm going to divide it into maybe the research and development arm of things. In a restaurant, you might have a research development arm. Then maybe you have a marketing arm, and the marketing people are reporting to each other. So there's a marketing manager. That marketing manager is just reporting or talking to the other people. And then maybe you have an operations side where the operations people are just communicating to an operations manager, and so on and so forth. You have all of these different functions within the organization, and the managers are sort of collecting and making decisions for those independent functions, and then that gets reported to the CEO or the owner, the owner of the operations, right? So it depends on the type of organization you have. So likely it's going to be the CEO that they're running the show, and they have, that they are reporting, that managers are reporting directly of each function to the CEO. And then the CEO makes sort of bigger decisions on what's going on, and the managers make all of the other real decisions on the day-to-day decisions that happen, and then the employees are actually doing things. They're actually sort of running and carrying out all the different operations. So this makes sure that there is standards and people are sort of accounted for, and there's not going to be nearly as many coordination problems. However, as you probably reach to about 250 employees, maybe it's 500 employees, there's going to be a moment where it's going to get really difficult to manage using this structure, because you get the same sort of coordination breakdowns. Pretty soon those managers, those independent managers of the functional areas, they will get overwhelmed and they'll be like, I just don't know what to do. It's just so much to do and I can't do all this kind of stuff. And then they're staying up late all night long. They're working 60, 70, 80-hour weeks, which is unhealthy for anybody to work that much for a regular basis. It's okay for a temporary time, but for a long time, it's not okay in an organization, right? So you don't want to have that happening all the time, because what ends up happening, that puts pressure on the home life. It starts getting, they get stressed out at home, and then, pretty soon it sort of has this ripple effect, and the overall quality and culture of the organization sort of diminishes over time. And then you get this performance, downturn, diminishing returns to that type of structure. Then what you have to do is transition to what's called an M form or a multidivisional structure. And so and there's a bunch of different kinds of this. I'm not going to get into that. But basically what that is that each division is its own independent company, and they're running sort of one product market or one geographic area. And there's basically independent CEOs, or, maybe it is some sort of, so basically it's independent sort of CEOs that are managing that particular division and reporting to the headquarters. And this was a major breakthrough, and it's often considered one of the major breakthroughs in organizations in the last 100 years where this actually happened. We started thinking about this. So this was really, really important because it allowed organizations to grow very, very large. And at that moment, that's where the organization can take off and become 1,000, 10,000 employees, and it grows bigger and bigger and bigger. And then the CEO of the headquarters, the CEO of the entire company, they are providing strategic direction, and they're taking a real step back from what's going on, and they're kind of just looking around and seeing, what's going on around here, making sure that they're that the company's moving in the right direction. So here's the thing. I don't know if you noticed it. This is where there's two important things that I'd highly recommend for you to go through this transition as you grow your organization, right? The first one is as you bring on more employees, you're going to have to take a step back. And this is going to be really hard as a small business owner, as a startup, as somebody that's sort of pushed things forward and got it to move to where it is and actually got it to the point. But you're going to have to take a step back and allow those employees. First of all, you have to figure out that you have to find great employees. Selection is going to be key to making sure that you have an organization that you can take a step back so you can find those individuals. And then once you're taking that step back, you have to keep taking a step back and stepping back as you are transitioning and growing your organization. You're doing less decisions on day-to-day decisions, and you're thinking sort of more strategically where this is going to go for the long run. And it keeps growing like that, and you have to keep taking a step back as you transition from a very small one-person company to a large company with thousands of employees. And that's the general transition that you have to do. So the second thing that I'd recommend, because it is so hard to do this, to sort of think through this, if you're any entrepreneur, if you're any typical manager running a restaurant, for example, or running a software company, or running maybe it's a cement factory, maybe it is any of the, anything, maybe it's a real estate firm that you have, I would highly recommend that you consult a consultant. And I'm not saying that there's I have no incentive here to suggest that. It's just that some of the recent research has shown that there is a really strong there's a really strong causation, actually, that the research was very causal. It's one of the few studies out there that have spent millions of dollars to do this study. That I'm thinking about right now. It was a professor at Stanford that did this. I believe he was at McKinsey for a long time before that. McKinsey is a large consulting firm, and they did this study. He's now a professor. It's Nicholas Bloom. You can look him up. He's got a great study on there. And they have causal evidence where they show that consultants made a huge impact on the performance of companies. And because what they allow you to do is invest in the company, invest in growing that company, because it's things that you can't possibly do. You're too busy on a day-to-day basis. So, and definitely don't be doing this when you're, a couple of employees. It's too expensive at that moment. But maybe when you're transitioning, when you have like 40, 50 employees and you have some revenue coming in, and you're thinking of a way to spend some extra profits, getting a consultant to come in to sort of figure out how to grow your company. So this would be like a business development consultant or a change management consultant. There's a lot out there that can do this kind of stuff. The big names, McKinsey, Deloitte, what else is there? There's Bain and Company. Those are probably really expensive, but there's also boutique firms out there as well that you can look at to get some help with that. And it does really truly help, because it allows you to they go in there and they're removed from the situation. They can sort of see things from 1,000 feet up, versus you are constantly working and developing things. And that's what that's going to do, is going to allow you to grow your company, because they are taking that step back. They've seen 500 other companies just like you, so they know how to get to the next step. And that's really important. And the other important thing when you do that is to follow their directions. If they suggest something, it will often managers won't follow those directions for whatever reason. And that's going to reduce the performance implications of what you do. So you have to be very cognizant of that when you are going through that process and getting a consultant. Highly recommend doing that in that moment. So those two things, go through that growth transition to think about how can I remove myself from the situation. So you can think of yourself as, going from, you're a bird on the ground and you are doing all of this scrounging around as much as possible. But then you're flying back and flying back and flying back as you grow the organization. And that bird becomes eventually you're 10,000 feet in the air, and then you have other birds that are trying to do all of the scavenging for you and doing all that extra work and looking for worms and stuff like that. So you have to constantly be taking a step back until you're taking this very large view of what's going on. So if you like this video, if you think it's interesting, it's helpful, make sure you could look at the other videos from previous Saturdays about small business and startups. The other thing, I do other stuff about innovation and all that kind of stuff on this channel. And if you want to help out with the Reciprocity Project, the E is spelled with a 3. You can look to see what I'm doing on there. What I'm trying to do is hopefully benefit graduate students if it ever starts making money. Currently, right now, it is not at all. But once it starts making money and it starts growing and stuff like that, I want to actually start investing back into graduate student scholarships and stuff like that. So what I also wanted to mention, if you like this particular video, you can do the old and you could also do a as well. That's fine. I don't mind. And if you want to, that's it. That's all I wanted to say today. I'm kind of babbling at this moment. So that's all I wanted to say. Thank you so much. Take care, and make sure that make sure you have a wonderful day, and I will see you on the next video. Bye.